manganese, and I'm sure all of you know the importance of those minerals in our body, even though they are a trace mineral. If we're going to talk about minerals generally, they are inorganic elements. They usually retain their chemical identity. They cannot be changed to anything else. They cannot be destroyed by heat, air, acid, or mixing. Some people believe that when the color of a fruit, like an apple, change, this is a rust to the iron in that fruit or vegetable, which is of course not true. It has nothing to do with iron or the minerals in that food. So it cannot be destroyed by heat, by air, by acid or mixing, while the vitamins can be destroyed easily by heat and sometimes by air. It is not lost during the food preparation unless you are cooking, let's say, vegetables, and you boil it, and then those minerals from the vegetables will go into the water. That will leach out to the water, and then you're gonna throw this amount of water, and you're gonna throw the water. You're gonna throw the water, not to use it. And how can I retain it, and how can I save it? This is why steaming is better than boiling. This is why when you are going to boil any kind of food, use a very minimum amount. Of course, I'm talking vegetables or meat. Use a minimum amount that you need to use it in cooking the food, and not to throw the rest of the water, not to put a lot of water. I usually tell them put minimum amount, and then if you need more, you can add more, but do not drain the vegetables. Just try to mix it as it is and use this water or this fluid. How the body handles the minerals. Some may need carriers to be absorbed and transported, others do not. If we take it in an excess amount, it can be toxic. They have different roles in our body, but one of the most important one is being the key fluid balance nutrient, the sodium, potassium, and chloride. And they have a very important role in our bone growth and in our general health. When we're talking about this, we should mention the bioavailability of those minerals. Some food contains binder that combine chemically with minerals, preventing their absorption and carry them out of the body with other waste. Meaning that those minerals, not everything we take, we absorb and benefit from, because the food may have binders that will reduce the absorptions. What is the meaning of bioavailability? The bioavailability is the rate at and the extent to which a nutrient is absorbed and used. If I took calcium pill 1000, is it 100% bioavailable, or it's 20%, or it's 30%? It depends on the other food that we are taking it together with it. So this is the meaning. The meaning of bioavailability is the rate and the extent to which a nutrient absorbed and used. One of the examples of the bioavailability is the protein available in the eggs. They said it's a 100% bioavailability, meaning there's some items in the eggs, they help the absorptions of protein. Of course, protein is not a mineral. I'm just giving an example. And this is why it's one of the best kind of protein, because you may absorb most of it without having a problem. An example of bioavailability of a mineral, if you look into the human milk and compare it to a standard regular formula, you will find the amount of iron in it less than the amount in the standard baby formula or infant formula. The reason that the bioavailability of the iron from the human milk, the mother milk, is actually much better than the one in the standard formula. When they are at the beginning, they've been imitating the amount, as you know, when they decided to make human milk. I mean, when they decided to make a commercial infant formula, they had to take samples from mothers and try to look into the content and make it similar to it. When they start doing this, they discovered that babies are developing iron deficiency anemia. With time, they discovered that the reason behind it is the bioavailability of iron from the human milk. The binders, what are the binders? They are chemical compounds in food that combine with nutrients to form complexes that the body cannot absorb. So those chemical compounds will join whatever kind of nutrients, and most probably it will excrete outside the body. Examples is phytate and oxalate. There's also, if we're going to discuss the minerals absorption, we have something also to consider, which is the nutrient interaction. It's the presence or absence of one mineral that may affect another absorption, metabolism, or excretion. Mostly they said that the supplements are most often to be blamed. One of the examples is when you're taking iron supplements, they recommend you not to take it with milk because they may affect the absorption. Oh. So we have to be careful when we are looking into I just have a question. Did you receive the presentation or not? Yes, it's in the chat. Okay. So if I'm going to take supplements or prescribe supplements, and I know that this supplement may be affected by another kind of mineral, it is recommended I should recommend or advise my patients to avoid taking it together. And this is why when you're taking multivitamins, you cannot correct a deficiency. If you want to correct a deficiency, you have to give the supplement alone. The multivitamins is just to support, or let's say to maintain your amount of nutrients, minerals, and vitamins. But it is not a treatment for a deficiency because those vitamins and minerals absorptions may be reduced due to their interactions. Is it clear? Okay, since we saw that the sodium is the major, or it is in the largest amount in our body, we will start with sodium. So it's the principal cation of the extracellular fluid and the primary regulator of its volume. The major function, of course, the most important one, is to maintain fluid and electrolyte balance. It also helps in maintaining acid-base balance. It's essential for nerve impulse transmission and muscle contractions, and it controls thirst. And this is why whenever you're taking too much sodium, you would feel more and more thirsty. We all know the link, or we hear about the link between sodium and hypertension. Actually, the blamed one is the salt, which is sodium chloride. Sodium chloride can affect blood pressure more than sodium alone, and in combination with other ions. So sodium alone do not affect our blood pressure. It's mostly either sodium chloride or other kind of sodium. There's a new one, which is sodium, what's the name? I don't remember it. The salt sensitivity. What is the meaning of salt sensitivity? It's a characteristics of an individual who responds to a high salt intake with an increase in blood pressure, or to a low salt intake with a decreased blood pressure. Why I'm saying that? Because studies showed that not everyone is responding similarly to increase intake of sodium. It is a characteristic of individuals, and some people react different than others. Some is really they need to take high amount of salt in order to maintain a normal blood pressure because it's affecting them. While others, whenever they eat something with salt and you measure their blood pressure, you will find it raised. So not everyone actually, or not, we cannot say that always sodium chloride is causing or raising our blood pressure. The other function is the sodium and bone loss. There is studies showing that high salt intake is associated with calcium excretion, which will lead to bone loss, but it's still now, it's not clear. The absorption of sodium is really easy. It's readily absorbed by the intestinal tract. It go travel in the blood till it reach the kidney, where all sodium is filtered. The kidney later on will take the amount that the body needs in the blood, and the rest will be excreted. The sodium deficiency, which is hyponatremia, what are the symptoms and when it can be occurred? It occurs when a person develops vomiting, diarrhea, or heavy sweating. Sodium must be replaced with water, or of course, if it's severe, usually they will give IV fluid. If a person is doing intensive activities like athletes, they can lose a lot of sodium and drink a lot of water because they are thirsty, and that will lead to more hyponatremia. I'm sure you saw several, or you know about people who go and exercise in the gym, or they go for a walk or whatever, and then they will come saying, oh, I need to replace my sodium. Actually, it's only with heavy sweating, and it's only with several hours of exercises that may lead to sodium loss and hyponatremia. So not a regular activity, and you don't need to replace your sodium if you're just doing a 1 to 2 hours exercise in the gym with an AC on and you just sweated a little bit. Even if you feel that it's a lot, it's actually not a lot. Usually, if you want to know if you're losing a lot of fluids and are you sweating a lot, you can take your weight before and after. For athletes, they may lose a lot. It could be 1 to 1.5 kilo. And this is when you need to replace your sodium. Normal sweating due to physical activity does not need sodium replacement. And this also includes when we are having a very hot weather, we do not need to replace our sodium. Because first, we don't walk in our hot weather. 2, the amount of sweat we're losing is not that much. In certain areas, maybe for the army or people or labor who work under the sun, maybe those may need replacement. Symptoms of the sodium deficiency or hyponatremia is muscle cramp, mental apathy, and a loss of appetite. Can we see this in our hospital? Yes, if we are having a patient with hyponatremia, he could have mental apathy or loss of appetite. For babies, infants below 6 months, if they are having hyponatremia, we will have problem making them gain weight. Sodium toxicity and excessive intake. Symptoms of acute toxicity are edema and hypertension. Prolonged excessive sodium intake may lead to hypertension. It's very important to know that it may lead. Not all of them, everyone who is having excessive sodium intake during their life, they will develop hypertension. The sources of sodium, what do you think? There's a question saying genetic. Yes, the characters is genetic, and this is why you would see a family that they are having hypertension, most of them. Salt is the highest source. You mean table salt, or there's other sources? What do you think? Table salt, which is sodium chloride, is the major one. But there's something we eat daily and it gives us the highest amount, which is the processed food. It gives us around 75% of our intake. 15% is from added salt during cooking and the table, and 10% from the natural content of food. So the largest amount is becoming from processed food. Soya sauce is high. Why processed food? Is it only because they add a lot of salt for you to like it? Sometimes when you're tasting the food, you will tell me, no, it's not that salty. It's actually using some herbs and using Maggi or using monosodium glutamate, which is called white Maggi. The monosodium glutamate have a high amount of sodium, and it is a food enhancer that makes the meat easier to be cooked, and it gives flavor for the food. And this includes Maggi, the regular one. Those are high in salt. Even if you're eating it, maybe you will not feel that they are too salty, except Chinese food. But Chinese food is having, in addition to monosodium glutamate as a food enhancer, they have soya sauce. Soya sauce have a high amount of monosodium glutamate. Monosodium glutamate, usually you will hear people saying that it is causing cancer. It's one of the worst, food additives, and that endomy will kill us in I don't know how many years. Whatever things about it. It is not a good food in our taste enhancement, not like the other herbs. No, it is high in sodium and we should reduce it, but it's not, there's no studies suggesting that it's leading to certain diseases. If it's true, that means all Far East people would be, dead for a very long time because they have a large amount of soya sauce and endomy, as they are saying. So we need to reduce it because of the sodium content. There's some moderate amount in meat, milk, and eggs. Some additives like sodium bicarbonate and sodium saccharin that will be provide or give you more sodium. The amount of sodium that we need. Remember when we've been discussing the categories, we talked about adequate intake because there's no enough information to support the recommended amount. They are recommending to give 1,500 milligram per day, okay, which is the adequate intake for adults. Any questions in regard to the sodium before we move to the rest? Is it clear? Okay, the second one is chloride. It's the major anion of the extracellular fluid, and it is the ionic form of chlorine. The functions. Again, it's important to maintain fluid and electrolyte balance. It helps in maintain acid-base balance. It occurs mostly in associated with sodium, and it's part of the hydrochloric acid in the stomach, maintaining a strong acidity of the gastric juice. And this is what makes it different from the sodium. The chloride deficiency may occur with vomiting, diarrhea, or heavy sweating, while the chloride toxicity symptoms would be vomiting. So a person could be having deficiency because of vomiting, and vomiting is a symptom of chloride toxicity. High blood chloride can be caused by dehydration due to water deficiency. So severe dehydration, the person could be vomiting for a long time, diarrhea or heavy sweating, and with no replacement of chloride, he would have, with no replacement of fluid or water, the person would develop toxicity. The side effects or the symptoms will be vomiting. The sources, large amount is in processed food, again, similar to the sodium. It's available in table salt, soy sauce, and some amount in meat, milk, and eggs. Also, for the chloride, it's an adequate intake. It's 2,300 milligram per day. That means it's more than the sodium. Before we, we need to talk about salt and the sodium chloride and the amount needed from it. The sodium chloride have 40% sodium and 60% chloride. The 1 gram salt contribute to 400 milligram sodium and 600 milligram chloride. The 5 gram salt is 1 teaspoon. The teaspoon I'm talking about is not the one that you use to add sugar, is the one that we use to eat sweet. That's called a teaspoon. The very small, spoon, it's actually only used in maybe here because of our small cup of tea, which is the biala. We have a very small teaspoon, and actually the teaspoon, international teaspoon, is the 5 gram, which is the sweet that we use it to eat sweet. The 1 teaspoon salt will provide how much? They will give us 2,000 milligram sodium and 3,000 milligram chloride. And if you remember the recommended adequate intake, it's less for both of them. And this will make you just, understand how much extra sodium we are taking. So 1 gram of salt, I don't know if you're eating, do you add a lot of salt? 1 teaspoon will give you around 2,000 milligrams sodium. I will tell you something a tip for cooking. As you know, when you are adding or you're flavoring food before cooking, it's much better. It will enhance the taste. But when you are, let's say, preparing meat, you will need to put the salt at the beginning. And maybe after cooking, you will find the food not salty. During the food processing, the taste of salt or whatever enhancement or, let's say, herbs, it will be less, especially salt. Meaning that if I add 1 teaspoon to, let's say, 1 bowl of stew at the beginning, and on the same amount of stew after or 5 minutes before serving, you would find the one that is added at the end is saltier. The reason that during food processing, the salt will go within the food itself and you would feel it less salty. And this is one of the tricks that tell you not to add salt while preparing food and just to add minimum amount at the end. Of course, not in big, parties or when you're cooking for occasions, that's different. But if you're cooking for home or you're preparing your food or your family, you can ask them to add sodium at the end, before serving. And please advise your family to reduce the usage of Maggi and monosodium glutamate, which is Maggi Al-Abyad. Okay? Because we don't know. We don't know if this person will develop later on hypertension due to their sensitivity, salt sensitivity. We don't know. So it's better to reduce it than being sorry. The third mineral we're going to discuss is the potassium, which is a principal cation within the body cell. The most important function is, again, to maintain fluid and electrolyte balance and to maintain acid-base balance. It also has a unique function in maintaining memory action, and it assists in nerve impulse, transmission, and muscle contraction. So it makes it different from the other two, that it is important for impulse transaction and muscle contractions. Potassium deficiency, it is characterized by an increase in blood pressure, salt sensitivity, kidney stone, and bone turnover. So here what I'm saying that if a person is not taking enough potassium, he may develop blood pressure. This may increase his salt sensitivity. It may lead to develop kidney stones, and he will have a higher bone turnover. That means he will lose more bones. Symptoms of potassium deficiency is irregular heartbeat, muscle weakness, and glucose intolerance. Why glucose intolerance? Because we need potassium to carry the glucose into the cells or facilitate the access of glucose into the cells. And this is why it is very important to maintain a good potassium, especially for patients, admitted patients, with the other minerals, but potassium also is very important to look at. So if the symptoms of deficiency, irregular heartbeat, muscular weakness, and glucose intolerance. What about potassium toxicity? High blood potassium can be caused by overconsumptions of potassium salt or supplement and certain diseases or treatment. Some medications, right? Do you know a medication that may lead to increase in potassium? Any medications that may cause it? No. Spironolactone, aldactone, they may lead to increased level of potassium, and this is why when you start a patient on them, you need to monitor their potassium for some time. Some diseases like renal failure may increase the potassium. Taking supplements without, medical supervision, it could lead to that. Symptoms, muscular weakness. So we said that toxicity may cause muscular weakness and deficiency may cause muscular weakness. Vomiting is actually one of the symptoms. If given into a vein, it can stop the heart. And this is an example of what? Do you know? Where do they use it? Never saw a movie that the person is for execution and then they just give him, yes, the lethal injection. They just give him this injection of potassium and he would die immediately, right? Okay. Sources of potassium, again, it is found in meat, milk, fruits, vegetable, whole food, which is grain and legumes. But it's also high in tomato paste, in date, orange, banana, and potato. So a person, if he is having high potassium, I need to monitor their intake of those, right? Like they should have less tomato paste. They should monitor their intake of dates. They should avoid orange, banana, and potatoes. Again, if I'm going to talk about the needs or requirements, I will go to an adequate intake. Usually, it's up to 4,700 milligram per day, which is much higher than sodium and chloride, even though sodium and chloride are higher in our body. Any questions before we move to the calcium? Okay. Calcium is the most abundant mineral in the body, found primarily in the body's bone and teeth, and I think it's most famous. Like whenever you're thinking of mineral, you will think of calcium, right? The function, as we all know, And whatever you talk about calcium, bones and teeth will come to your mind. But actually, it's also important for muscle contractions and relaxation. And this is why if someone is having contractions of the muscles, the leg muscles, they will think about him having calcium deficiency. It's also important in nerve functioning. It participates in blood clotting, and it is important to maintain normal blood pressure. So again, we said that potassium have an effect on the blood pressure, and now we are saying that calcium have an effect on the blood pressure. So if I want to maintain or to prevent hypertension, I should take enough potassium and calcium in order to maintain a normal blood pressure. Calcium in bones. The calcium salt form the crystals that give rigidity and strength to our maturing bones. Bones gain and lose mineral continuously. Bones gain and lose minerals continuously. So it is an active tissue. We have to be very careful in order for us to maintain our bones. When withdrawals exceed deposit, problem develops. What is the meaning of that? The bone have calcium, phosphorus, and potassium. And also magnesium. If I am losing calcium from my bones and I'm not regaining them back by our, let's say, nutrients, that means I will develop a problem in the future. Even though the bone is an active tissue and that it can gain and lose mineral anytime, we have to maintain our bones, because whenever we grow older, we're going to lose more bones. Look into this. My bone density would start to be built until I reach 20, and this is my peak bone mass. This is the best. You're the strongest. You have the strongest bones at that age. After that, even with if I am really concerned and I'm really careful with my food and everything, I will start losing bones. Look into this one. And this is why sometimes, I will give you an example. My mom, during her 70s, she did not develop any osteopenia. Her bone structure was perfect because her food, her intake, she always keen with my father to have calcium and fruits and to exercise. So she were doing so well. When she reached 80, there was, she lost during this time a lot of her bones and minerals. To reach 80, she started developing osteopenia in her spine and now in her pelvic area. And I'm telling you, reaching or having good bones until 70, this is great, especially for our population. We are starting to have osteopenia showing in the age of 40. And as you all know, osteopenia is really painful and cannot be reversible easily. We have to maintain our intake of calcium and exercise, not calcium alone, all minerals, in order for me to maintain strong bones. Any questions? Calcium also showed, or some studies showed, that it helps in some disease prevention. There's a protective relation between dietary calcium and blood pressure. I already told you that. Also blood cholesterol, diabetes, obesity, and colon cancer. So if I'm taking enough calcium, not a lot, the amount needed, I may have a protective relationship, or let's say protective action toward my blood pressure, blood cholesterol, diabetes, obesity, and colon cancer. How do we absorb calcium? Is it 100% absorbed? Actually, no. We only absorb 25% of what we are ingesting. As I told you, if the recommendation is 1,000, that means I'm only taking 250. But this is why it's difficult to maintain it. Factors that may enhance calcium absorption include stomach acidity, which helps the calcium to be soluble, vitamin D, which helps to make the calcium binding protein needed for absorption. So I need D to absorb the calcium. Lactose in infants only. Why did I wrote this lactose? Because some families, they start their babies in lactose-free formula because they develop diarrhea or for any reason. And their absorption of calcium is less than the babies who are taking a normal human milk, or let's say a lactose containing formula. So we have to be keen for babies to take lactose. Absorption improve whenever calcium is needed. So if my bones need calcium, that means I'm gonna absorb more. If I don't need calcium, the absorption will be less. If we're saying that the absorption of calcium is not that good, that means there's something affecting this absorption. The formula point of the lactose? Okay, I will. I am saying that lactose helps in calcium absorption, right? And this is why we have to keep the babies in lactose containing formula or human milk, because as you know, human milk contain lactose, right? This is the natural sugar of the natural sugar of the milk. Some babies cannot tolerate lactose. That's different. I'm talking about normal babies. They should not be on lactose-free formula. If a baby had been started on a lactose-free formula because they developed diarrhea or for any reason, they should not continue on that. You as a physician or as a member of the family, you have to advise them to go back to their standard formula, which contain lactose. If for any reason, thank you for asking, I had to put a baby on a lactose-free formula, I need to monitor and watch their bones. If I have a baby with lactose intolerance from birth, and I started this baby on lactose-free formula, I have to monitor the bones. I have to look into their labs. As you know, we cannot monitor deficiency by looking into the calcium serum. I have to do an equation to calculate that. So, but this information, why it's written here, lactose in infants only, this is only for babies. And subhanAllah, this is to help them absorb more calcium, right? Since the calcium absorption is not really good and it do not have a high biological value or bioavailability, sorry. This is why God created this relationship between calcium absorption and lactose for infants only. Is it clear? Okay. Since we're saying that the absorption is only 25%, and we already talked about the inhibitors, that means something is affecting the calcium absorption or inhibiting the calcium absorption. We talked about the things that enhance the absorption. Again, the things that enhance the absorption is stomach acidity, vitamin D, and lactose for infants. The one that inhibit this absorption is lack of stomach acid. What is the meaning of that, or how can I get that? If I'm having or taking anti-acid medication or taking Nexium, that may affect my absorption of calcium, and that may lead to osteopenia. And I think most of you heard about the big campaign regarding the chronic use of Nexium that may lead to osteopenia or is already leading to osteopenia in young ages. The second one is vitamin deficiency. If I'm having vitamin deficiency, the calcium absorption will be affected. This will tell you what? This will should encourage you that I should not not give calcium supplement without ensuring that this person is receiving vitamin D. If I am giving prolonged vitamin B, I'm giving prolonged calcium supplement without vitamin D, that may lead to what? If the absorption is not really well, it may lead to either calcifications, artery calcifications, or it may lead to stones, kidney stones. So, and this is why, like, let's say 20 years ago, whenever a woman is reaching menopause, they will advise her to take calcium. And calcium supplements were being recommended for everyone. Studies showed after 10 to 20 years that this has actually caused more harm than benefit. And the problem now that a lot of people, they're saying there's no benefit of calcium supplement, and calcium generally is not good for your health. It's damage your arteries, and we should not take calcium. I do not recommend calcium supplements if the person is taking dairy product or legumes or the other sources of calcium. But if the person is not taking enough, he or she should take it as a supplement. For me, I have an allergy from dairy product, a casein allergy, not a lactose intolerance, because if I'm having a lactose intolerance, I can take Laban or Zabadi. But if I'm having casein, that means I should not take any source. And since I'm having this problem and I'm not taking enough calcium, I should take calcium supplement with vitamin D. Because if I'm having vitamin D deficiency, this calcium that I'm taking is going to stay in my body and not absorbed well, and I'm not benefiting my bones. Another thing is the high phosphorus intake. If I'm taking too much phosphorus, this would reduce the calcium or inhibit the calcium absorptions because there's an imbalance between them. There's a balance between them. Phytate is found in seeds, nuts, and grains. This one is considered to be an inhibitor for calcium absorption. So if I want to give a supplement, I have to tell them to be careful when to take it, calcium supplement. The oxalate, which is found in beet greens, rhubarb, spinach, and sweet potato, also affect the absorption. One of the things is chocolate, because oxalate found in chocolate. So if I'm asking you, plain milk will have a better calcium absorption or chocolate milk, which one would have better absorption? Plain. Yes, plain is better absorbed. So if I'm talking about seeds, nuts, and grains, what did come to your mind? What is the regular or one of our breakfast options? One of the breakfast options is to have oatmeal or to have cereal with milk. What do you think? The absorption of calcium, is it going to be interrupted? Yes, it is. So even if you're taking a glass of milk with your nuts, with your, cereal, your absorption is not that as much as you're expecting. It will affect your absorption. Okay? Any questions? If you look into this one, this is an example of my ability to absorb calcium, the body ability to absorb calcium, depending on the type of food. I have cauliflower, watercress, Brussels sprouts, kale, kale. Did you know that kale is good in calcium? It's one of the good sources of calcium because of its high source and because of the absorption. Kale, broccoli, okay, turnip, all of them contain the bok choy, which is the Chinese lettuce. They have a good absorption. Then it comes to milk, calcium, fortified soya, cheese, yogurt, calcium, fortified food and beverages. The absorption is 30%. Almond milk, sesame seeds, pinto beans, sweet potato, the absorption is less. If you look into the milk, the almond milk container, you would find that actually it do not contain a lot of calcium, and it also, the absorption is not that good. But if you're a person who's not taking enough dairy product, you should be keen to have nuts and legumes, because also like chickpeas, they have calcium in it. The worst in absorption is Spanish. Why? Because it's high in oxalate, rhubarb, and Swiss chard. Calcium deficiency, it may lead to stunted growth in children and bone loss due to osteoporosis in adults. So we have to be careful to prevent having osteoporosis in the future. Calcium toxicity, if the person is having calcium toxicity, it will show as constipated. It will increase risk of urinary stone formation and kidney dysfunction and interference with the absorption of the minerals. So if you're taking too much calcium, that may affect other mineral absorptions. Osteoporosis. Osteoporosis is a disease in which bones became porous and fragile due to loss of minerals, also called adult bone loss. So it's osteoporosis. Is it a common disease? Just give me a second, please. Okay, so osteoporosis is a disease in which bones became porous and fragile due to loss of minerals, also called adult bone loss. Sources, as you know, we said milk, milk products, small fish, greens, broccoli, bok choy, and some legumes. They also, if we look into the amount needed, it's adequate intake, around 13 milligram for less than 18 years. Between 19 to 50 is 1,000. Above 51 is 1,200. Why? Because we are losing more bones. So they are saying if you give more calcium, the absorption will be better because you need more calcium. Any questions? What do you mean by elderly? Yes. Yes, they need more. Okay. The next mineral to discuss is the phosphorus. It's a major mineral found mostly in the body, bones, and teeth. Function, one of the most important one is the bone mineralization, teeth and bone mineralization, and it is also part of every cell. Yes, it's common. Osteoporosis is common for elderly, and in our country, it's common for younger age. As I told you, it starts from 45. And because of low level of physical activity, not being exposed to the sun, and not taking enough calcium and vitamin D. And also we have some men who developing osteoporosis or osteopenia in younger ages. Okay, again, for the phosphorus, it's important for bone mineralization and teeth. It's part of every cell. Why it's part of every cell? Because it's part of a major buffer system that maintain acid-base balance, and it is part of the DNA and RNA. Therefore, it's necessary for all growth. So if I'm having a child who's not growing well, he might have phosphorus deficiency. It is part of the phospholipids, and it is the part of the energy currency, which is used in energy metabolism. So the ATP, the energy currency, contain phosphorus, and this is why phosphorus is part of every cell. It's important as a buffer system. DNA, RNA, phospholipids, which is the phospholipids, is the wall of the cell, right? Part of the wall of the cell, and it is the energy currency. Phosphorus deficiency is unlikely. Symptoms: muscular weakness, bone pain. So the person will have bone pain. Phosphorus toxicity, it leads to calcification of non-skeletal tissue, particularly the kidney. So if this is a person having large amount, mostly supplements. No adverse effect of high dietary phosphorus. So not taking too much phosphorus may lead to the toxicity. Toxicity can come from supplements only. Sources of phosphorus: food rich in protein. So whenever there's protein, that means we have phosphorus. This include meat and dairy product, and eggs, of course. Recommended dietary allowance. Now, all the first four, we've been saying adequate intake. For the phosphorus, actually, we have a recommended dietary allowance. The adults, they can take up to 700 milligram per day. We also wrote here the upper level, meaning that person should not receive more than this amount because it may lead to toxicity. Any questions? Magnesium. It's a cation of the body cells, active in many enzyme system functions. It's important for bone mineralization, building of protein. So if I'm not taking enough magnesium, I will not build protein. I will not build muscles. Enzyme action. So please always think of magnesium and protein together. Essential for nerve impulse transmission and normal muscle contractions. It's important to maintain our teeth and its functioning of the immune system. It's important for a better functioning immune system. Again, it's important for bone mineralization, build of protein, enzyme action, essential for nerve impulse and transmission, like the sodium, a normal muscle contraction, also calcium, maintain of teeth, functioning of immune system. If there's toxicity, it will lead to weakness, confusion. No, I'm sorry, deficiency, I'm sorry. Weakness, confusion, and extreme convulsions or bizarre muscle movement. Like someone, if you know someone who's exercising and then his small toes will be contracted in a very hard way, or they will be over each other, this is a sign of magnesium deficiency. Usually it comes with, or start the deficiency from the feet. So, and this is with minimum deficiency, not extreme. Extreme, of course, will lead to convulsion and severe or bizarre muscle movement, hallucinations, difficulty in swallowing, and in children, it may lead to growth failure. So phosphorus and magnesium may lead to growth failure. If there's a toxicity, Usually it's from supplements like the phosphorus. Symptoms: diarrhea, alkalosis, and dehydration. It is rare, but it can be fatal. The sources: the dark green vegetables, dates, nuts, especially cashew and almonds, legumes, whole grains, seafood, chocolate, and cocoa. And it is recommended to have good amount of magnesium and to be aware that we need to take this kind of food to get magnesium. Recommended dietary allowance, RDA. Men need 400. Why? Why do we need more than women? Why men need more than women? Because there's more protein and muscles in their body, right? Remember? Yes, more muscles. The upper level, this is the maximum amount that we should provide for a person, is 350 milligram non-food magnesium per day. So if I'm giving supplements, I should never, ever give more than that. Any questions? The next one, iron, is one of the most famous mineral. Whenever you think about mineral, you will think about iron. Iron is an essential nutrient, but it poses a problem for millions of people, even though it is a micro mineral. It's a trace mineral, even though it is cause a lot for a lot of people, because deficiency is common and it can happen quickly. And it can be seen, the symptoms, you can see the symptoms. Other things, maybe you need years to see the symptoms. The functions, it's part of the protein hemoglobin, which carries oxygen in the blood. This is what we all know, that if you're having low hemoglobin, we will think about iron deficiency anemia. It's part of the protein myoglobulin in muscles, which makes oxygen available for muscle contractions. So if I'm having iron deficiency anemia, I don't have enough in my muscles, I'm not having enough oxygen in my muscles, that means I will feel weak, right? I will be tired. This is one of the symptoms. It is important for the utilization of energy as part of the cell's metabolic machinery. Excuse me. Sorry. So that means if I'm having low iron, I may feel weak because also the energy is not received well by the cells because of this deficiency. So it is important for the utilization of energy as part of the cell metabolic machinery. Iron deficiency, it leads to anemia, right? So if I'm having iron deficiency, it's not always anemia, because it should start first with deficiency. And if I did not treat it, it will be, or the patient will be anemic. But unfortunately, we only discovered this late. The symptoms of anemia is weakness, fatigue, headache, impaired work performance and cognitive function, impaired immunity. So people who are having anemia, they might get sick more. Pale skin, nail bits, mucous membranes and palm creases, concave nail, inability to regulate body temperature. So if you have a friend that is really always cold, she or he might need to check their iron level, not necessarily hemoglobin, no, iron. And then the last one is pica. Pica Do you know what is pica? Pica is craving non-food items or non-food substance, like eating soaps or paint or smelling gasoline or a lot of those things, weird things. And it's usually common in pregnant ladies. Yes, like holes or sands. It's common in pregnant ladies. Why? Because iron deficiency anemia is common with pregnant ladies, and also eating ice. If you find someone eating ice a lot, especially pregnant ladies, they eat ice a lot. It's called pica, and it's a sign of having deficiency. One of my friends, I found out suddenly that she actually eats soaps daily, and she picked the taste, And then I told her, how's your blood iron? Do you have any iron deficiency anemia? She said, no. I said, are you sure? She said, yes. I'm actually not sure because I did not check for a very long time. And then when she went and I was insisting for her to do a blood test, and then when she did, her hemoglobin was 7. And she started to receive a lot of iron supplements, IV. And another one, also it affects the appetite. Like one of my friends, she really don't feel hungry at all. And when we check her blood, she is also having iron deficiency anemia. So if you have those symptoms, look for iron deficiency anemia. Toxicity, it causes GI distress, iron overload, infection, fatigue, joint pain, skin pigmentation, and organ damage. When can this be reached? If I prescribed an iron supplement for a patient to overcome her or his iron deficiency anemia, and I did not limit the time. So I just gave him this, you take 2 tablets, and that's it. No follow-up, nothing. And this person continue to take this supplements for a very long time. He might reach a toxicity level that will lead to storing of this iron in their organ, which will lead also to damaging it. Blood transfusion, do you mean you're asking that it may cause toxicity? I don't think so. Or I never heard about it. Maybe, I don't know. So, but mostly it's from supplements. And believe me, some people take iron just to become healthier, as a supplement, not as a multivitamins. And if you're taking it as a multivitamins, it's, as I told you, it's not absorbed or highly absorbed. But if I'm taking iron supplement for several years, that may lead to toxicity. So giving a time or a period for using the iron supplement with follow-up and doing lab tests is very, very important. If you're saying that if I'm giving too much blood, like, I'm not sure about that, but if I'm giving a lot of IV iron in one dose, this could be toxic also. I need to be careful in the dose that is being given to patients IV. In the iron, since it is really common, the iron deficiency anemia, I should discuss it more. It is a severe depletion of iron stores that result in low hemoglobin. So if I'm having iron deficiency, that means I'm not taking enough iron for several days, months, maybe a year. This will lead to the anemia. So it's a severe depletion of iron stores that results in low hemoglobin and small pale red blood cells. It is a microcytic hypochromic anemia. Microcytic, the cells will be small. Hypochromic, the color will be light. So can I have an iron deficiency without iron deficiency anemia? Can I be having a deficient iron and give supplement for a person who is not having iron deficiency anemia? Yes, yes, because if I am not taking enough iron for a year, I did not develop anemia yet, but all my stores are depleted, and I am able to be diagnosed with severe or with depleted stores. Supplements should be given to this patient. It should be given to me. I should not be, or the physician should not wait until the hemoglobin is low. And we should monitor all the iron indicators, not only the hemoglobin. It's not always hemoglobin. Who are at risk of iron deficiency anemia? Women in their reproductive years because of the menstrual cycle. Pregnant women, they are always at high risk, and a lot of them will develop it. Infants, young children, and teenagers. Infants, because they are not receiving a replacement of their iron when they are weaning from the formula. The mother is not giving enough iron-rich food, or they are started on cow milk. The cow milk is really poor in iron, and then the person or the baby will have iron deficiency anemia. Young children, which is preschooler. I think one study in Jeddah had been conducted in, I can't remember the study name, but it was conducted in Jeddah on a preschooler age, which is 3 to 5, to see the percent of students that are having iron deficiency or iron deficiency anemia. And the percent was around 50% of the population. And this is why in the last few years, they've been in the market a lot of follow-up formula, which is a formula given after 1 year to advise family not to switch to regular milk, which is poor in iron, and to avoid iron deficiency anemia for those ages, 1 to 3. And if I am giving regular milk and I'm not giving iron-rich food, this may lead to it. But if I am feeding my kids healthy diet, taking enough mineral, enough legumes, and enough protein, and I will be providing enough iron in their diet. Teenagers, generally, they have a higher risk than others. The stages of the iron deficiency anemia, it's important because, as I told you, we have to start the treatment as soon as possible. If the iron stores diminish, that means I need to measure serum ferritin, not the hemoglobin. At this time, the hemoglobin will be fine. After that, so the first level, or let's say stage, is iron stores diminished. I'm not taking enough iron and I used all my stores. I can measure serum ferritin. After that, transport iron decrease. Since the serum iron falls, the transferrin, which is iron carrying protein, increase. It enhances iron absorption. What is that supposed to mean? I'm not taking enough, and my body needs a lot of iron. So I will try to enhance my absorption. By doing what? By moving around or carrying more and more iron. In this level, how can I know if the person is having iron deficiency? I will measure serum iron, which will be low, while the transferrin will be high. So if I am having transferrin high, which is the iron carrying protein, it is a sign of iron deficiency anemia, or let's say iron deficiency. I did not develop anemia yet. Is it clear? The last stage, when the hemoglobin production declines. So I'm unable to produce enough hemoglobin because there's no iron, right? Usually, as I told you, our people are diagnosed when they reach this stage, right? Any questions? Sources of iron: red meat, fish, poultry, shellfish, eggs, legumes, and dried fruit. Someone asked me, what about spinach? Then we know Popeye used to eat spinach and becoming so strong because of the iron. That was one of my childhood cartoon. It's actually not an accurate information because when they discovered in 2000 that the numbers of iron in the spinach is written wrong because of the zero. It is 0.8 and it's showing as 8 or something like that. So it is not a very high or a rich vegetables. It's not more than other molokhia or any other green leafy vegetables. But the best source of iron is red meat, fish, poultry. That means animal products. And then comes legumes and dry fruits. Yes, so disappointing for our family to give us spinach all those years and then discover not. And one of the things that also very famous for its iron content, while it has no iron in it. Do you know a vegetable that your parents will tell you, no, it's very high in iron, you need to take it? Eggplants, right? All those people think that when you cut eggplant, it's becoming dark because it has a lot of iron, which is a very misleading information. Okay. Eggplant is not high in nutrients. It's not one of the best vegetables. Okay. For iron, we have a recommended dietary allowance, which is the RDA. Men, they need 8 milligram. And women, they need 18 milligram from 19 to 50. Why? Because they are in their what? Menstrual cycle. Because of the blood they lose during the month, they need more. And actually, women do not eat more meat and dairy and animal products more than men. They are taking much less. This is why iron deficiency anemia is common in women more than men. Dates. I wrote here in the sources dried fruits. Dates, if it's not balah, it's dried fruit. Did you know that? So actually, dried fruits have higher percent of iron in it. All dried fruit, okay, including dates. But is it one of the best options or best resources? No. Best resource is animal products, all animal products, then legumes. Okay. Absorption. What do you think? Is it easily absorbed? It is really sensitive for absorption. And I think all of you know the story of the tea and iron absorption, right? Yeah. Saying don't drink tea because it's gonna make you lose, not absorb, it will affect your iron. So the iron balance is maintained through absorption. More iron is absorbed when stores are empty. Remember, we talked about this. Whenever I'm having depleted stores, I will try to absorb more and more iron. Iron have two forms in food. It can be heme or non-heme. The difference that heme as in the blood, it's from animal. Non-heme is from animal and plant product. Remember, heme is only from animal product. Non-heme from animal and plant product. Heme is the iron holding part of the hemoglobin and myoglobin. It's about 40% of the iron in meat, fish, and poultry is bounded into heme. The other 60% is non-heme. So the iron holding part of the hemoglobin and myoglobin protein is the heme. It's around 40% of the iron in meat it's in heme form, and 60% is non-heme. So which one is more, heme or non-heme? Heme. But which one is better for the absorption? Is it heme or non-heme? Let's look into the absorption enhancing factors, because I want to absorb more and more and more iron. The first one is MFP factor. The MFP factor is actually a peptide released during the digestion of meat, fish, or poultry. So whenever I want to digest animal product, meat, fish, and poultry, there will be a peptide released to enhance the absorption of iron from those meat. So that means, and this is one of the reasons why those is considered to be the best source of iron. They are high in iron, and it's also absorbed much better because of this peptide. The second one is vitamin C ascorbic acid. So if you want to absorb iron better, add a lemon, drop of lemon to your meal, and this will help in absorbing more iron. Or if you're taking iron supplements, it's recommended to take orange juice or vitamin C source with it. Sugar also improves the absorption of iron. 18% dietary iron is absorbed from mixed diet, while only 10% dietary iron is absorbed from vegetarian diet. Because of what? Because of the heme. Since the heme is better absorbed, so 18% dietary iron is absorbed from a fixed diet. When you are putting animal product with vegetables, this mix will provide better absorption to the iron in the diet. So the calcium, it's only 25% almost absorbed. For the iron, it is 18% from a mixed diet and 10% from vegetarian diet. So that tells us what? Vegetarian are in higher risk of iron deficiency anemia. Look into this soup. Do you know what kind of soup is this? This is a chili soup. It's a famous one in steakhouse. I don't know if they have it anymore. So the chili soup, is it a good source of iron or not? What do you think? Is it a good source? Yes, good. I want more answers. And if it's yes, why? Why it's a good source? You know, I hate online teaching because I don't interact with with the students, and I like to ask questions and let you think of answers, because you know, this is part of our daily habits. So it's good to learn about it. This is why it's good to learn about nutrition. Abdullah is saying that because of vitamin C. Where's vitamin C here? Can you give me an example? It's a right answer. It's a correct answer. One of the correct answers. Lemon. No, it has no lemon. It has vitamin C. What's another reason of having it? Vitamin C is one, another reason. And the chili? No. Not the chili. What does it contain? Let's look into the content of it. Component. It has meat, right? It has beans. It has tomato sauce and tomato, pieces of tomato, and it has vegetables in it, right? So what kind of iron is in here? Is it heme or non-heme or a mixed animal and vegetable? Both. As you know, meat have both. But now in this plate, we are mixing the two sources, animal and vegetables, or animal and plant product. We said that the absorption will be the best if we mix them. In addition, that the things we are mixing is actually high in iron. The meat is the highest, right? The legumes, which is the beans, also contain iron. The vitamin C in the tomato, because tomato is rich in vitamin C, it will improve the absorption. And also this is green pepper. Green pepper also have vitamin C. Actually, it has a lot of vitamin C that people didn't know about. People think that only citrus fruits will give us vitamin C. No, all fruits and bell peppers will give you vitamin C. So the mix, the content will help us to absorb more and more vegetables. So if you're eating, let's say, a steak, try to take some vegetables with it. Put a drop of lemon on the salad or on the meat itself in order to improve your iron content. If we look into the same picture, do we have anything that may inhibit the non-heme iron absorption? Yes, the phytate. Phytate, it's in legumes, grains, and rice. You tell me, but now you said that legumes help in absorbing the iron, because I'm mixing both of them together. But if I'm taking beans alone, that means my absorption is less than expected because of the content of phytate. But if I'm mixing them together, the absorption will be better. Vegetable protein, which is soya beans, legumes, and nuts, the absorption is less than the animal protein. Calcium, having more calcium will affect the iron. And this is why, remember at the beginning, I told you, if you are giving calcium iron supplement for a pregnant lady, ask her not to take it with her milk or dairy product. Last one is the tannic acid. The tannic acid and other polyphenols in tea and coffee. Actually, it's not only tea that affect the absorption of iron, but I don't know why he's the only one blamed. And it is in all kind of tea and coffee, and also in soft drinks, the dark soft drinks, because they add tannic acid to it. So the absorption of iron is affected by tea, coffee, and Pepsi or cola. And this effect is a temporary effect. It's a 2-hour effect. So if I had lunch and I have tea or coffee always after my lunch or dinner or breakfast, my absorption will be affected definitely. But if I'm having tea or coffee occasionally and not directly after lunch or food, it will not affect my absorption. If you mix phytate, this will enhance or decrease absorption. You cannot mix phytate. Phytate is part of the nutrients, which is part of the food, legumes and grains. But if you are having food that high in phytate and you are mixing it with an animal product, the absorption is better. If you are having only vegetable protein from legumes and grains, this will absorption is less. And this will go back to our explanation. This is explaining why we said that mixing is better than absorbing only from vegetable protein or vegetable food. Is it clear, Lean? Any questions? Any questions in regard to iron before we move? Yes, it includes eggs. Eggs is a very good source of iron. This is why we recommend for infants to give them eggs. Before it was 1 year, now it starts from 8 months. Eggs is a good source of iron and people can take it daily. There's no limitation of eggs intake as people think because of the cholesterol. Any questions? Okay, so we will move to the zinc. Zinc is an important trace element and it requires as a cofactor. Function of the zinc, you won't believe how important zinc is, even that it's needed in a very, very, very small amount. First, It's part of many enzymes, and it is associated with hormone insulin. So it's really important for the absorption of glucose. It involves in making genetic material and proteins. So I need the zinc for this. It is important for the immune reaction. It's important for the transport of vitamin A. It's important for the taste perception, wound healing. I'm sure you know that if you have a wound and you applied zinc to it, the wound healing will be improved. And if you have a zinc deficiency, you will have a problem in wound healing or in healing your wound. It's important for making sperm. So if a person is having low zinc or zinc deficiency, sperm's production will be reduced. It's important for the normal development of the fetus. This is why, because as we said here, it's an important in making genetic materials and proteins. Is it common to have zinc deficiency? It's more common than you would think, especially for pediatrics. I always, when I have a patient who's not growing well, the first thing that I check is zinc deficiency, especially that we have sick patients. We have patients with problem, patients who are receiving medications or having bad or malnutrition. Zinc deficiency is common. If I have a zinc deficiency, I would expect to, or if patient have a zinc deficiency, the expected symptoms is to have growth retardation, delayed sexual maturation, so he will not reach sexual maturation early, impaired immunity, he might get sick a lot, hair loss, so if you have a patient with hair loss, check their zinc as part of the workup, eye and skin lesions, and loss of appetite. So if he's having low, let's say chemotherapy, or he's sick, check their zinc. Maybe if you give them zinc supplement, their appetite will improve. Let's look into this picture. What do you think is the age of this man? You know, this is an old picture in the 50s. I feel that in 50s, people or men, especially men, they look older than men now. Actually, this is a 20 years old man. 20 years old. I don't think now we have a man 20 years old look like that, right? Mostly they look younger and fresher. I don't know. This is in the regard, he's a 20 years old man. What about this boy? What do you expect his age is? I want suggestions. 12, 50. لا لين مش للدرجات دي يعني لا. Any other suggestions? What do you think the age of this? 8? Why do you think we put the pictures together? He's actually 20. He's the same age of this man. He's 20 years old, but what happened to him? He did not reach puberty, right? He did not reach sexual maturity because of severe zinc deficiency. Why? Because he's in his area, they depend only on vegetables, and which is poor in bread, mostly bread, which is poor in zinc. That, you know, this is a long time ago. And zinc deficiency is actually common. And he is one of the cases of severe zinc deficiency. Okay, so zinc deficiency, please remember this picture, cause delayed growth and delayed sexual maturity. What about zinc toxicity? Also loss of appetite. So if I'm having zinc deficiency or zinc toxicity, it could lead to loss of appetite, impaired immunity, again, low HDL, copper and iron deficiency. This is a very important statement because sometimes you would have a patient with chronic iron deficiency and you're giving iron, but the iron is keep coming down without a very obvious reason. You need to check their copper and you need to check their zinc there's a link between those three in the absorption and deficiency. So if I'm having high amount of zinc or zinc toxicity, it may lead to iron deficiency. Can it toxicity be by the diet? Mostly no, because it is really very small amount in the diet. Usually it can come from supplements. But as you know, zinc is a good supplement for hair, and people can take it over the counter and may lead to zinc toxicity. Sources of zinc, it's mostly protein-containing food. This is what I told you before. Red meat, shellfish, in addition to whole grains, some fortified cereals. So some of the fortified cereal may have zinc. The RDA of the zinc is around 11 for men and 8 for a milligram for women. Again, why men more than women? Because of the muscles, right? It is part of the muscles. Any questions in regard to zinc? The next one is iodine. Iodine is a trace ion. It's called iodide. It is indispensable to life. It's very important. The function, if you think about iodine, what is the first thing you think about? Is thyroid hormones, right? Which helps to regulate growth, development, and metabolic rate. When we reach iodine and we talk about it, you would believe how much minerals are important for our growth. And this is why with countries with malnutrition, the first thing will be affected are their minerals, and this is why it affects their growth. So it's a component of 2 thyroid hormones that help to regulate growth, development, and metabolic rate. The iodine deficiency, it's lead to either simple goiter or cretinism. Simple goiter, and this is the picture of it, it's an enlargement of the thyroid gland to an iodine deficiency, malfunction of the gland, or overconsumption of a goitrogen. So this is not really common to see now, but it used to be common before in older ages with people who live far from the shore and they don't eat any seafood and don't add any salt. They may develop this deficiency. But now you can see it with people with malfunction of the gland or, as it's been said, taking too much goitrogen, and we will talk about it. Cretinism is a congenital disease characterized by mental and physical retardation, commonly caused by maternal iodine deficiency during pregnancy. Females who are not eating well during their pregnancy, they are following a very low salt diet, and they're not eating well for any reason, they may develop, the baby may develop cretinism from birth, and it is a congenital disease, and it is characterized by mental and physical retardation. It's not only physical retardation. Goitrogen are substances that enlarge the thyroid gland and causes toxic goiter if taken in very large amounts. It occurs naturally in some food, like the cabbage, kale, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, broccoli, soya beans, peanuts, peaches, and strawberries. If you look into those food, one of the ideas that will come to your mind that those are, some of them are one of the superfood, right? Food that have functions beyond their nutrients. We know how important is strawberries. We know that broccoli is really good. But actually, taking too much from certain kind of food or most of the food is actually harmful and may lead to other diseases or symptoms that we don't know about. And this is why subhanallah ta'ala said or order us not to exceed or taking too much from anything, right? Kale, we know how important kale is, right? But if you're taking too much of it, it may lead to toxic goiter. I want to tell you something. When I was growing, cabbage soup was a very famous soup for weight loss, and everyone was eating cabbage soup day, night, every time. And believe me, a lot of people have hypothyroidism in our country. I think from the cabbage, maybe the amount we took, it's massive amount. Maybe we used to drink it every day because you know why? Who recommended this? Mayo Clinic had a cabbage soup diet that they give to patients to lose weight before cardiac surgery, and then it to provide 800 calorie only. And it was a very famous diet, and a lot of people was following it. Okay. Iodine toxicity, it's an underactive thyroid gland. It will lead to elevated TSH. It will lead to goiter. And during pregnancy, it causes damage to the developing fetus if we have large amount of iodine and it cannot be taken from food. Sources, iodized salt. Please make sure that the salt you're using at home is iodized. Seafood, bread, dairy product. Actually, bread only if the company is using iodized salt or adding iodine. The source of iodine, even that we need very, very, very small amount, we could, not take enough easily. Plants grown in iodine-rich soil and animal fed those plants. We don't have iodine-rich soil, so it's not applicable to us. Recommended dietary allowance, it's around 150 microgram per day. As you see, most of the trace minerals are having RDA, while the major minerals have adequate intake, right? Put this in mind, and please remember that I don't need you to memorize those numbers. Why? Because you don't need them. If you want to know the amount, it's found in most of the resources. The upper level, 1,100 microgram. Why it's important to know the upper level, just in case you should not give this amount, it's really toxic. Copper, the last mineral, it's necessary for the absorption and use of iron in the formation of hemoglobin. So if I'm having copper deficiency for any reason, it could be genetic, my absorption of copper is not good, I would develop iron deficiency anemia. We had a patient who's been iron deficiency anemia for several years. She's receiving regular amount of iron with no benefit. And then one of the girls in my team, she checked her copper and it was really low. We don't know the reason. She's eating well, but most probably she has a problem in the absorption. And when we fixed her copper, her iron improved, or her iron deficiency anemia. It's part of several enzymes, all involve reactions that consume oxygen. So copper is important for oxygen, like the iron. Copper deficiency, it may lead to anemia, iron deficiency anemia, and it may lead to bone abnormalities. Copper toxicity may lead to liver damage. It can be from supplements or due to a genetic disorders, Menkes or Wilson disease. So sources, seafood, dates, nuts, legumes, whole grains, and seeds. We need it in a small amount, which is around 900 microgram per day. Any questions? Reach the end of our presentation today. Any questions? Thank you all for attending, and inshallah see you. I think, can you repeat what you said about trace minerals? Yes, I told you that most of the trace minerals that we learned about today is actually the amount needed is by RDA, while the major minerals or the macro minerals, the recommendation is by adequate intake. Remember the one that we discussed last presentation. We talked about either I would know the amount by RDA or by adequate intake, right? The major minerals, there's not enough studies about them, so we are giving the recommendation or the amount needed by adequate intake. Trace minerals, it's by RDA, just for your information. Any other questions? Okay, thank you all for attending, and inshallah see you not next week, the week after. Thank you.